Today is day 3 of the April 88 7-day retreat. Before getting to the question that we mentioned at the end last time, why don't I change? We have to discuss some other things which have come up in meetings in response to yesterday's talk. Maybe to clear things up. Whatever comes up and isn't clear, can one clear it so that the mind is free of that problem, doesn't carry it around? Sometimes something doesn't clear up, and then one carries an unanswered question. Not as a problem, just as an unanswered question. And every once in a while that comes up, and one doesn't know the answer. But the question is alive. And sheds light on how we live. Several people responded to something in the talk yesterday, or maybe the previous talk too, the upshot of which was, you're taking everything away. You question motives, you question the goals, you question the practices. What have I left? Most of the time it's not put as a question, it's put as a statement of fact. I have nothing left, and my mood is correspondingly blah, depressed, discontented. One person put it, it seems the fun has gone out of it. This is not peculiar to this particular retreat. We all go through these moods of which one can call withdrawal, if my motives are questionable and I can't quite go along with them anymore and my goals, then sort of a zest is gone out of my life, at least at this moment, out of the retreat life. Nothing seems to make any sense or have meaning and significance anymore. This is extraordinarily important to look at, isn't it? Do you see it that way too? Extraordinarily important to look at that. At that phenomenon of depression, depletedness, blahness, lack of energy or zest. With the motive I want to get something, and the goal, what I want to get out of this, in question or dropped, gone, not holding up anymore. In talking with people about it, what I was instantly reminded of was the visit to Ben's first grade school day, where, as far as I can remember, there was nothing the children were asked to do or were doing that was not either praised or devalued by the teacher, mostly praised. All the children have a folder where in which their work collects, and these folders are to some degree or other covered with stickers. Some children, very few, some of them almost the whole page full of stickers, a sticker for work well done. One time when the children were asked to read quietly, Ben had asked me to sit next to me. That's where he wanted his grandma to be for that day, and the teacher's very obliging. She asked him, what is her name? And he didn't know. He said, it's Grandma. Makes you feel good. So here, sitting right next to him and reading this story with him, I was amazed what a nice story this was. It was not the Dick and Jane version I remembered from Kyle's days of school when he was a school teacher. It was really a lively story, nice illustrations, beautiful watercoloring. It was engrossing if one is interested in stories and in reading, and he is. So he read and turned the pages and was very quiet. And this particular thing was for the teacher, who is the quietest reader? So while Ben was reading and she passed by, she dropped a little gummy snake. Do you know what those things are? The kids love them. Imported from Germany. It's a certain candy out of vegetable gum. Dropped that on his page, and he was astounded for a moment. It interrupted his reading. Then he sort of smiled at me and snuck it away into his pocket and went on reading. Well, later on she said a few children who were the quietest readers have got a gummy snake. Maybe tomorrow you will get one. The arithmetic problem, takeaway problem it was called, was a long sheet, a sheet full of problems, enough to scare a poor arithmetic kid sick, full of problems. Children were to have the page down at the beginning, facing the white page, the white back, and the moment the teacher would say go, they were to turn over this thing and now see who was the first one done. Again, Ben, quite good at it. He zoomed through this stuff. And also when there was a problem like 6 take away 0, which is simple, he looked throughout the page where there are similar ones to quickly put those answers down, which was efficient use of the brain. But in spite of his hurry, he didn't finish the page, and he was dismayed. Told me, I haven't finished 8 problems. He counted them out. And looking at this page, my response was, you finished all of those problems? I haven't finished 8. And as he handed it to the teacher, he said, I haven't finished 8 problems. And she said, good. She tried to encourage him over all the problems that he had finished. But for him, he hadn't finished 8 problems. And another time when they were to write something creative, at one point the teacher said, now I'll give you a countdown. from 5 on, there's 5 more minutes to write. And then you have to hand the story in. And this was pushing almost a panic button for Ben. He said, I don't have enough time to finish this story. I said, Ben, 5 minutes is a long time. Couldn't convince him of this. He didn't add to his 2 lines. I was afraid he wouldn't finish and not be in that finishing mode or whatever went on in his mind. What I'm mentioning this for is how in grade 1, and he's hardly started that grade, there is this tremendous thing of praise, reward, competition, being the first, being the fastest, faster than others, better than others, more than others, and of course less than others and poorer than others. Alive in that classroom, even though it was, on the whole, it was a nice atmosphere in a way because the teacher didn't have to reprimand many children. They were quite well behaved. Therefore, it was not much hassling going on. But you see why I'm mentioning this and looking at this very seriously, because this is where we've learned to do something for the sake of the reward. What will come to us because we're doing this? What we'll get for it? What we will become because of it? The quietest reader of the day. And with that, we lose this ability. It is literally knocked out of us to enjoy something for its own sake in an atmosphere which does not contain praise and blame, reward and punishment, where the thing itself is what is alive and what is meaningful, not what it is done for. So we have learned all our lives to do this for the sake of that. Work for the sake of a paycheck or fame or power. Advancement. And trying to get that and be sure to get it. And the anxiety, will I get it? And the dismay if I don't get it. All of that totally overshadows the work of this moment. And it snuffs out the potential joy of the work of this moment when it happens not under pressure, not under the lure of reward and the threat of punishment, threat of hell. I remember from past days in the Zen center, how texts were read. If you do not understand this or do not come to enlightenment, you will go to hell as sure as an arrow or something. Some such statements made. Or then it'll take you lifetimes. The time brought into, for the future's sake. And what is the time? What is the future? It's thought and fantasy, isn't it? It's not what is happening now. So this conditioning, which all of us, most of us have gone through, we bring here. I remember in studying some anthropology in college, reading about some Indian tribes, the Pueblo Indians, the Zuni, the Hopi stand out as names in memory, where this kind of behavior was not valued. the competitive, sticking out behavior. What was valued there, or is, I don't know to what extent this still prevails, is to be one with a group, not to make individual effort to stick out and be praised for that. That was considered absolutely evil. That's why when psychologists came into these tribes to administer IQ tests, to test the IQs of Indian children, they couldn't get results. Not that there was no intelligence, but there wasn't this necessary zest with which one has to approach a test. That didn't exist. There was great dismay among anthropologists how to test this intelligence. But most of us haven't grown up this way. We've grown up in a society in which competition, highly valued, it's a way of living. And punishment and reward seem to be the only means for most parents to deal with their children. And it's habit. I've often told about this child observed in the airplane. I'll tell it again. A little toddler, too small, it seemed, to handle some very complex blocks, which nonetheless he managed with great patience to put together until all the blocks were used up. And the mother sitting next to him didn't praise him. She just picked up a few blocks, which in the process dropped to the floor, and put them back on his tray. So when he was done, he took them all apart and started over again. And later on, passing by that lane in the airplane, trying to take a look at this remarkable mother, I saw she had 5 more children. On that aisle and in front. So this child was very lucky. She had enough witness to pick up his blocks and put them back on his tray. But maybe it wasn't because she had 5 children. Maybe she didn't do this with any of her children. And this little boy never fussed around. He was plenty busy and happily busy. So coming back to a retreat, sitting quietly. This question came up by several people. Why do I sit if there is no motive and no goal? No goal. Why do I sit? Why do you sit here? Isn't that important that one asks oneself that question? Not just rhetorically, but deeply. Because when we do ask questions of ourselves, then things begin to reveal themselves. Our whole thought and motive and movement structure, how we move about, why we move, with what expectations, with what thoughts, and what these thoughts do. A thought of a possible goal or the achievement of that goal, just that one thought can act like the injection of an energizing fluid into the system. Instantly, if one observes carefully. The thought of something to look forward to energizes the system. And just like with all substances that are introduced, we become addicted to them. We become addicted to energizing or pleasurable thoughts. And they occur and reoccur more and more frequently to feel good, better, less blah. Can one observe that? This we called it yesterday the laboratory here, or this theater it has a show all the time, ready to be watched. We watch with great absorption shows on video and television and on the big screen. But this show we're oblivious to. We don't want to watch that. It's too depressing. Which it isn't, if there is the right kind of watching, the right kind of observing or awareness, which does not condemn. It's not to condemn, it's not to praise. It's to see, to learn, to understand the truth of this moment about oneself and everyone in this whole universe. Because what holds is true of oneself is true for you and you and you and all of us. We go through the same things together. The same cultural conditioning, the same social conditioning. Some nuances, some differences from country to country, from family to family. But it's all conditioning. Which, if it is not aired, illumined, seen and understood, runs our lives. One person, the way he put it was, right now I just find myself watching this ever-present propensity either to become somebody, to be somebody, forget what the other was. To strive for to go into a direction. That was it. Either to become somebody or to move in a certain direction. These are our propensities. To become somebody, move in a certain direction. Maybe not in this direction, then in that direction. And if I find this direction too doesn't bring me satisfaction, and I'll change directions again and go into another direction. But always in some direction to become somebody, something. That's put very simply. And if one can observe it that way, then there is no condemnation, and there may be insight into these moment-to-moment movements, which, if they're not seen, take over. Take over and away from what is actually happening. Underneath this may be this mood of boredom, blahness, lack of zest, and overlaying that mood so as not to get in touch with it, not to explore it, is the drive to become somebody or to move in a certain direction. Then I don't have to deal with what I actually am this instant. What I am, where I am. Why don't we want to explore that and be in touch with that? Why is there such a hesitancy or aversion or fear of that? One thing that is often said is, I don't want that to be all there is. So a conclusion has already formed in the brain that whatever mood one may find oneself in. We called it earlier a state of withdrawal, feel of lacking, not having, not enough, or loneliness, despair, boredom, low energy. The fear is that if I look at that or remain at that's going to be all there is. We've learned from since we've been little children, that if our present moment is painful, to use fantasy to change it. Little children that are lonesome invent fantasy companions. Of course, not right now. It's Sesame Street. It's all the offerings of television that are the companion. I asked Ben last Christmas when he had gotten a new video game, which in an amazingly short time he mastered like no adult, pushing these things to have this little figure hop and avoid the enemies with spears and boulders, shoot back and so forth. And he was possessed with doing that. That was it. Nothing else for the time being. And I asked him if he does this most of the time during his vacation time. And he said, when I feel very lonely, I do that. You don't say to a little child, can you be with your loneliness? You don't say that. At least I didn't. But here we're asking that question. Not my loneliness, not my loneliness, my boredom or despair, but whatever is there in a human being who feels caught without the habitual stimulation of motive and goal. Is that asking too much? We all like to think about that everything is in the here and now. This is said almost in all psychological therapy systems. Everything is in the here and now, or encounter systems. And what is expected when one enters into something like this is the thrill of it, maybe. Maybe no thrill in it at all. One finds that out in therapy too. Just to meet what is the human condition, when it is bared of all stimulation, accustomary. Or what one thinks is stimulation, or is joy or pleasure. And to watch the propensity, as one person put it, to become somebody in that, to become the sufferer of it, the endurer of it. To watch how we always want to make the self into something, make the situation somehow resulting in a new self-image. Always to be something, somebody. To see that, to see it happen under one's eyes. And not to fall for it, not to be deceived by it. And see and see and see, discover what's going on. Not with reward and punishment, with condemnation or hope. It's not a matter of hope. Hope is fantasy. What's here right now is neither hope nor what is it? Can the mind be wide open in the face, in the midst of whatever has moved this body and mind, has produced certain effects? Unconditionally. We'll say unconditionally, because so quickly one does this, all right, I'll do this, but then will something better happen? Then there's already looking out for the result again, and not completely there. Completely there with what? One doesn't label it, one doesn't know it. You see, the moment that this state of mind is there, this unconditional being with, or looking, observing, opening. No rejection, no dividing a self from it, making a self out of that. Seeing those processes in the mind and not falling for them. Just the openness of no expectation. The sensitivity and vulnerability to what's actually there, the pain of it, the fear of it, or the lacking of it. That state of mind, of no division, no separating from it, no wanting anything from it, no condemning it or judging it in any way, that state of mind is new. That state of mind is not conditioned by the past, is unconditionable. What's conditionable is thinking. But just looking is not conditionable. It's just seeing what is. And when that takes place, there's a completely new joy, buoyancy. It has nothing to do with what it is that is seen. It has to do with the freedom from division, from wanting. The freedom from fearing and withdrawing. So what is essential is not what it is that is seen, pain, despair, or whatever one may label it for the time being. It's not important what it is that is seen, but that they're seeing. That's important. That's essential. Not on a value scale. It's of the essence of living. No matter where one may find oneself. And that essence isn't there if we just look for escapes or practices to help us over our scatteredness. A few people brought that up. I find I'm so scattered, I really need a practice. If one asks, well, why aren't you doing it? Well, then often, you seem to think they're no good or so. Please try out for yourselves. What does it mean to practice? What is usually mentioned is observing the breathing. Following the breathing, some people call it, or counting the breathing. Reminiscing about my beginning years of doing this work at a center where I myself was assigning practices to people, first counting the inhalation and exhalation, then just counting the exhalation, and then just awareness of the breathing. What most people came to meetings for was to ask, how can I be more concentrated in my practice? My mind seems to scatter all over the place. But the mind can learn to concentrate. I think that's a fact. Like, it can practice to concentrate and become more concentrated. Although some people never seem to have after years, and the despair. I've done this for 5 years and I still can't concentrate. And other people, the first retreat, there's no problem concentrating. So one wonders about all of this learning. But coming back to the breathing, which is a marvelous thing to watch, it's a marvelous thing, is one really in touch with this, what this inhalation, exhalation, the words don't capture it, which is happening all the time, no matter how excited or upset or dull we feel, there is this going on. No matter how concentrated or unconcentrated we are, we're breathing. But why does one have to concentrate on it? Why can't one just simply, in all humility, be aware of it? It's there. Why does one have to make something out of it? A practice. To listen to it, to feel it. So innocently, so non-knowledgeably about it, just to listen to it, feel it. Breathe. The whole body is breathing. And not make a thing out of it. Not isolate it from the wind and the birds and the rustling of clothes in the room. The cawing and the thundering of a plane. That's all part of breathing. It's all part, it's one whole. But if I set my goal to concentrate on my breathing, and my motive is with that to maybe eventually become enlightened or more this or that, then I create distractions at the same time. Because everything is trying to distract me from concentrating on my breathing. So then I have to battle the distractions. And I've created conflict where there is none in truth. So rather than concentrating and on the breathing and trying to do something about the distractions, if these distractions come up time and time again, why doesn't one look at them? What is it that distracts me? What am I thinking about? What is the effect of these thoughts? One may find in looking at distractions, it's like the tip of an iceberg. The depth of it, how deeply our thoughts lie, often almost what we call unconsciously. Only unconsciously because we don't give awareness, give attention to them. By seeing a thought, a fleeting thought is no longer unconscious. It's not a distraction, it's happening. The mind is full of them, conscious and unconscious thoughts and memories. This is happening right here. And I don't want to see it, don't want to be aware of it, don't be in touch with it. I rather cultivate a fantasy of a future goal and do something now for the sake of the gummy snake. We've learned a lot of devaluation of what goes on in the mind. This is good, this is bad, this is trash, garbage, people call it. And one doesn't know one's garbage. One isn't familiar with it. All the toxic elements that need to be seen and understood, or else they rummage around. People say, at this point what you're asking is very difficult or too difficult. I can't do it. Why do we have any conclusions about what something is and what we can do? Can one see its speculation or conclusion drawn from what was so in the past, yesterday or up till now? That doesn't mean that this is going to continue. Particularly, it doesn't need to continue if we don't harden ideas about what we can and can't do. That's why we always ask, is it possible to drop all conclusions about oneself and what is easy and what is hard? What can be done and what can't be done? No, suspend it all. Our mind has already much more buoyancy. Some people said that when I really realized that you can't do it for me. Like, there is no authority in this. I realize I have to do this myself. And there's a new energy there. Unless one languishes for a new authority and seeks it out. And there are authorities all over who are only too happy to point the way, to interpret, to guide, to assign practices. As long as we want that, as long as we want authority to tell us what to do, we are totally vulnerable to exploitation. And it's always a mutual exploitation. It's not just that teacher may exploit the disciple, but the disciple exploits the teacher by making him a teacher, by offering discipleship to him or her, which seems so hard to refuse, because one becomes somebody in the process. Both become something. And again the question, why do we have to be anything? Is that our only way of feeling secure? Being somebody? How secure is it, being somebody? Today I may be the quietest reader or the fastest arithmetic calculator, and tomorrow somebody else is. And I'm deflated. I have to work hard to get to the top again, or else I realize it's impossible to get to the top, and now my image is I'm a loser. And I get attached to that image too. We get attached to all kind of images, not just positive ones. And that's what we think we are, and with that we live, and that dominates our life. The relief, the tremendous relief and release of energy, if it's not bound in being somebody or having to become somebody, then one's only security is the wholeness of life, which it becomes meaningless to call that secure or insecure, doesn't it? It is, it's alive. It changes. It renews. There's death in it, dying and new living. Constant dying and constant renewal, that's the wholeness of life. And we're not separate from that. If we stop attaching to the image of being this or that, or wanting to wander a lengthy path to become something in the future, then the mind travels in images and fantasies and is separated from this wholeness of life. At least it feels that way. So, where are we? What are we? Can there be fresh listening without any conclusion? No fixed images, seeing images as images, not falling for them? And seeing all the dynamics of it, maybe the disappointment or dis-ease, all of that, not labeling it. Here, words are put on it, but these processes are so complex, so vast, and so empty. They amount to absolutely nothing. So all that's left is the twittering of birds. And the peepers. That's not all. You can't put a word on it. It is really not knowable. We will end here for today.